Hola, hola! Welcome to the Breakthrough Brand Show. I'm Fabi Paolini, and my mission on this podcast is to give you the behind-the-scenes stories, anecdotes, and unique perspectives behind building a premium brand that makes a real impact. I believe that when you create a message that is aligned with your truth, you can have the breakthroughs that changes lives. Each week, me and my guests share with you how we're making an impact with our message and the stories behind our success. So that being said, let's dive into today's episode. Well, today I have a super special guest on the show, Ryan Alford, who is a radical brand builder. I mean, come on, perfect place to come on, right? Successful entrepreneur, marketing influencer. He's a madman. And, he's the host of the Radcast, a top 20 US business podcast, CEO of a digital ad agency called Radical. And I'm just really excited to have you here. So welcome, Ryan, to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity, and let's talk some brand and whatever else. I've been living and breathing it for 20 plus years. I'll have to age myself a bit. So looking forward to it.
I love it. Well, tell me what you do in your own words.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I think I'm a good storyteller. I'm definitely a hybrid marketer. I started in marketing right out of school, and one of the few people that probably did it. I've been in the ad agency business for 20 years, 15 of those working for other people. And then now I am, I guess an entrepreneur describes me best. I'm involved in 3 or 4 different companies, but I've worked on some of the largest brands in the world in my career and been blessed to have a lot of experiences. But I guess you'd boil it all down to some sort of marketer amongst all of those things.
I love it. I actually started my career in advertising as well. I worked at Leo Burnett as an art director for like 3 years. So
know the world.
Yeah, craziness, but really good, really fun. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about who you work with. I mean, obviously, I know that you've worked with massive companies as well, but I feel like I want to kind of start with understanding who your ideal audience is right now. And it might be broad or maybe not, but I'm just kind of curious to that.
Yeah. I'm going to give you kind of 2 answers to that. Like, I personally work consulting, coaching, doing really authority building with leadership, executives, and people that want to grow and expand their personal brand to create leverage in the market, I believe, and have trademarked the statement, it pays to be known. And so I work a lot with, coaching and mentoring executives and helping them develop their personal brand to help them expand their company opportunities as well as their personal opportunities, both from a legacy standpoint. And I just purely believe that the more you are in the social sphere, the more known you are, the more opportunities you get. My company Radical, works primarily with B2B companies or e-commerce companies. Typically, what I like to say is fairly established companies that are good foundational businesses that are looking to become great. I'm a firm believer that marketing is not medicine; it's gasoline. You can't fix a bad business with marketing. What you can do is you can accelerate and assist great or good companies and help them become great with the proper marketing messaging and ultimately just execution of tactics and strategy.
I love that. So because you went there, and this is where I go too, what do you feel in terms of messaging? How much of a role do you feel that messaging plays in effective marketing?
Yeah, I mean, it's in today's world, it's sort of everything. I kind of came up, I feel like what's old is new again a bit. We're getting, digital marketing, which, we are a digital agency, was such an interesting space. It kind of created a cheat code there, 2010 to 2018, let's say, because of Facebook and all this ability to hyper target, and do things. People were able to kind of jump ahead of. Maybe the messaging took a little bit of a backseat to just offer and promo and things like that. But I think we're getting back to a space because, that market's been oversaturated to where the storytelling, the narrative, and the messaging plays an even more important role in really defining what you are and ultimately what your target consumer, how you want them to think, how you want them to feel, and what you want them to do. And I think messaging plays into all of that.
Yeah, I feel like what I've experienced over the years as well is that you could have the perfect, quote unquote, perfect marketing strategy and the funnel and the ads and all the things. But if your messaging, and I think that almost more specifically, I want to hear what you think about this, you're targeting, and I'm not saying like who you're choosing in ads in Facebook of like your interests or whatever, but how you look at your audience, I think that that's really the core. Do you feel like that's accurate as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's like a little bit of a lost art of you can't be all things to all people.
Right.
And, sometimes alienating or separating one audience is the best thing you could do, because it creates a community and an audience that really responds to you better. And I think sometimes what I see brands doing is, they're trying to shuffle the deck a little bit too much to too many people. And I think really narrowing in on that audience is key to success. And really, people have never been more aware that they're being marketed and advertised to. They know it. And so there has to be a level of authenticity. And if you aren't specific in that discussion with that audience, then they're going to see right through it.
So one of the things that I've kind of come across and kind of personally radically stand for, to use your phrase of radical brands, right, is in favor of or against kind of pain marketing, right? I call it like going from pain marketing to going to gain marketing. And I feel like what I've experienced over the last few years with most of the coaches and marketers and companies that I've worked with has been like, let's push on the pain and let's do problem agitate solution sort of formulas. And let's talk to the problem and let's make people feel like if they don't buy this, their life is going to be over and all that crap. And I personally kind of took a moment, maybe around 2 years ago, where I felt like this doesn't feel right. And it doesn't feel like where the market is going. And I've kind of shifted to focusing more on gain market. That doesn't mean that you're not going to speak to the problems, but it's like you're leading more with desire. So I'm kind of curious to what your thoughts and your experiences around some of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I've played all sides of that coin.
Right.
I came up working on and helping develop campaigns for smartphones, really ushered in the smartphone era, working with Apple, Verizon, Motorola. And the pain points then were cell phone connection and speed of connection to really do all the features and functions. And so, what I would always try to counsel clients to do is you can lead into the problems, but we'd like to do it in fun and interesting ways, and not necessarily ways that spin it or that are I like evoking emotion, but I like evoking the right emotion for a memory and for relatability.
Yeah.
I think relatability is probably the key word. It could be emotional, it can be pain, but it needs to be relatable so that it shows that you understand, and it's not just for a knee-jerk emotional reaction.
Yeah.
So I think it just depends on what you're marketing, because we did a lot of that with cell phones, and one of my first campaigns was "Can you hear me now?" with Verizon. Oh, wow. And so if you remember that, I mean, one of the most recognizable campaigns of all time. And it was a fun way because it was Test Man walking around for Verizon. And look, it was a pain point. People would get on the phone and you'd drop the call. Everyone remembers, that's old enough, those young.
I don't remember that. I have no clue what you're talking about, Ryan.
Well, you and I might be old enough to remember, but, maybe a few millennials out there that don't, but because they've had the wonderful nature of ubiquitous cell phone coverage for the most part. But it leaned into that in a fun way. Test Man's walking around, he's testing it.
Right.
And, and so people related to that. And so you could say that was a pain point in a way.
Yeah, you're right.
But you make it relatable and interesting and fun. Instead of, playing with just consumer emotions for the sake of playing with consumer emotions, because sometimes I think that's ineffective in the long term.
100%. I love that. I love that perspective. So what do you think is the key way that a brand has to differentiate themselves? Which is a broad question, but
it is
massive.
But I can answer it, but because I have a really specific perspective on this.
Okay.
We like to work with category leaders, or people that are willing to change and develop the category.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Lochhead is a mentor of mine and someone I follow very heavily, and he's owns a company called Category Pirates, and there's this belief by him, and I don't let a lot into my sphere because there's so many voices around, but he is someone that I really listen to, and I think if you can develop your own category mm-hmm. as a brand, you have first mover potential and opportunity, because if you're just fighting for leftovers, trying to be best, trying to be a better brand in an existing category, you're typically fighting over 25% of the market, because 75% is owned by the category leader.
Right.
An example of that would almost be similar to like Coke and Pepsi. They seem like they're competitors, but Coke really dominates the market.
Right.
And there's a million other examples. Uber coming in and establishing that owns nearly 70% of the market, because it established a new market for transportation and getting around as taxis kind of stagnated. There's a lot of examples. So what we like to do is, work with brands that are establishing a new category, or assist them in kind of developing their product or their portfolio and messaging to build a separate or different category where it makes sense. So I kind of start there. Mm-hmm. And then, sometimes we're working with a company that doesn't know it, that they're already the category king. And so, or queen. And so we like to help them establish that point and message accordingly, mm-hmm. which is, I don't believe in like chest beating anymore. We're the greatest this, we're the number one that. Right. That's ineffective. But there is a tone of voice and a manner and approach for brands that are in a category lead position.
I love that. Is this, because I was looking through your website, is this what you do to focus on creating demand for companies?
Yeah, it is one of them. And we believe in, our universal kind of go-to-market is B to H, business to human.
I like that.
Or human to human, like to take it a step further. There's no B to C, there's no B to B. We like to message and counsel our clients to think through a human lens with both messaging, branding, and focus, because a lot of times, especially in B2B, mm-hmm. less so in B2C, it gets very feeds, feature heavy, talking about the business product or service, mm-hmm. when it doesn't get into the human level of what are the ultimate benefits, and are you being authentic, and do they understand what you're messaging? And so we counsel and work in a lot of ways with businesses through that lens.
So I think that what is tricky about it is finding your category when you are coming in a saturated market, right? I feel like when I guess the point is for you to kind of do something that is completely different, but mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit more about how you define? I mean, I know I don't want you to give it all away, but about what your process is, or what people should be doing in terms of defining what their own category is.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is identifying what the gap is in the current market, mm-hmm. right? What is the current market? It's based on consumer insight, right? Any category is developed around a consumer insight ultimately, which is how do we take a person that's a consumer that's in position A and get them to position B, C, or D. And usually that's done through an insight, through a gap analysis of what might be missing in the market, a key attribute, a key problem that it hasn't been solved. And sometimes you're solving a problem that they don't even know they have.
Right.
So sometimes it's being, problem aware versus solution aware. And so it's a dynamic process, but it starts with that gap analysis, and then consumer behavior. There's usually an insight. And a lot of times, that's where the messaging comes in with right. developing things that kind of start to position the client or brand in that new light. But it's a very detailed and complicated process that's unique to any given company.
100%. That makes sense. Okay, so let's switch gear a little bit and talk about marketing. And I want to hear about your point of view or perspective around what's going on with short form video, TikTok and Reels and YouTube Shorts, and how brands can leverage that more to get more visibility.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I kind of said it earlier. People have never been more aware they're marketed to. So,
Yeah, 100%.
and we have so many channels now. So attention spans are fleeting. And I live and market through with companies, generally speaking, through two lenses with content, especially when it relates to video. Mm-hmm. So when I'm interrupting someone, when I'm in their feed, their Instagram feed, their TikTok feed, I'm interrupting their entertainment to a degree, right?
Right.
Especially if I'm in a company. So when I'm in an interruptive mode, I am trying to be short, sweet, to the point, educational, entertaining. And that will have a lasting impact quicker because I'm interrupting. Long form video belongs on your website or on YouTube where they have, clicked a link. So they are making an active point to search you out. They're investing time in you so you can have longer form. But short form video is the way to break through and to create more massive reach because of the organic way with which these platforms and the algorithms are now channeled through, how long it's watched, shareability, all engagement levels, and short form, quick cuts, quick storytelling, quick entertainment is what will drive those metrics. So ultimately brands have to play along.
Right. And it's like you're using short form to take them to the long form content where it's like you're filtering people through that are your ideal client at the end of the day.
Well, I mean, I'm an old school guy. If you're watching this or listening, if you're watching, you'll see my V shape on the thing, the funnel, the top of the funnel to the bottom. You have awareness, you have consideration, you have intent, and you have purchase. To 100%. Simplify it. And at the top of that is awareness, and short form is what gets them into the funnel. And how we ultimately close them might be long form, but before they're ever going to take that step to want more interest level is they're going to have to relate and spend enough time with you at the top of that funnel, which is what the short form kind of allows for.
100%. Is there a go-to? And I mean, obviously I know that you have a lot of varied clients in different industries and all of the things, but I'm curious if there's if there's a go-to strategy that you feel people aren't leveraging enough or not really paying attention to enough?
Yeah, on social media. Yeah. I mean, it broad-based, but on social media, there's the biggest thing is defining what I call subjects for your messaging, right, and sticking to them and consistency. There's way too much. Oh, we ran that. We tried it. It didn't work. Well, that's not the way you're going to measure it. You're going to have iteration in social media messaging, especially, and creating those kind of content subjects with which you stick to, some with which feed into, a consumer emotion that you're trying to do, something that feeds into the master core brand, some things that show the personal side of executive leadership. Like, you need to have these components of subjects and those need to be pulled through in all of your communication channels. And I think the one thing that I feel like is missing is a firm strategy. As crazy as it sounds, too many companies are kind of shooting from the hip. They think they have a strategy, but they really don't.
100%. It's funny how, and I think it comes down to that same sort of problem of not really, you're just thinking that marketing is going to solve things, right? And okay, let me just go viral. Number one, it's not that easy. Number two, even if you do go viral, doesn't mean anything because you could go viral with your cat dancing or whatever. And great, good for you. Unless you sell cat products, I guess.
One of my favorite sayings is hope is not a strategy. And if you're hoping for virality, then good luck.
Right. And I think that I think that what happens too often is that people don't, they're too reactive in their businesses and they're like, okay, well, let me do TikTok. Let me do this. Let me do that. And not really sit down and think about, number one, I need to have clarity, real clarity in my messaging, not 5-minute. I watched a video on how to create an avatar and that's clarity or whatever basic thing that you're doing, but real clarity on who you are, who your audience is, what's going to relate, what's going to build that relatability, and then turn that around and say, okay, how do I connect the dots between my audience and me? How do I create the strategy that's going to bring us together? But let me just post all over the place and kind of, I'm visible. Great, my friend, but you're not doing anything.
Yeah. And I mean, it's part of the reason you hire an agency, and while we get hired as Radical, is when you hire an agency called Radical, we immediately have a license to live to our name. And so, but you as a company internally, a lot of stakeholders won't push the envelope or won't go where we're not afraid to go. And so you've got to test and iterate and kind of get out of your own way. And that's back to being authentic in today's world. And being able, you don't have to get off brand to have a personality online.
No.
And so there's happy points in there, but I think a lot of people just check the box with some of these things, but they're not leveraging the full potential that exists.
No, not at all. Well, because you brought it up, now I'm curious. What does being radical mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it means look, we never start from the status quo. We always start from the furthest point out. It's we take inspiration from what works, but we challenge ourselves to think further. And it isn't a 100% success rate of every piece of content that's ever come out of our shop is as radical as we want it to be. But it does take a certain stance and a certain approach today to break through. And you are not going to break through copying or doing what you think is what will work, or what you think will make everyone within the company comfortable. And so we start by telling people immediately that they need to start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
I love that. It's so interesting because I have an upcoming workshop and I'm writing the content for it. And one of the things that I was talking about is precisely what you just brought up of, how often people think that, well, if I'm seeing these companies in my industry who are successful doing things this way, it must mean that that's who I need to be or how I need to show up to be successful. And what ends up happening is everybody's like a little copycat of each other with variations, but you're not really standing for anything. And it gets people to keep on scrolling.
Yes.
Right.
Well, there's a country music song. I'm forgetting the name of the artist. It's a fairly new song, and it's called "I'm Not for Everyone."
There you go.
And all the lyrics are about the fact, when some people yin, some people yang. And I think you have to lean into that on some levels, because a lot of times what we think will work and break through, it's 100% the opposite.
Yeah.
And it's surprisingly effective.
100%. And I do think that your level of expertise really matters to what you're saying, in the sense that I think that when you're too new and you're still figuring yourself out, being radical can be very challenging because you still don't understand what you don't you don't have the insights yet necessarily. And I think that detail is really important when you're in that space. Does that make sense?
It makes 100%. You don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And it's, that's why you work with specialists and other people. But, I have a career littered with, yinning when people yang. And so I could walk into rooms I was on the floor of Verizon Wireless at 27 years old, telling them and them listening to me to, take left turns when others take right. So I've built a career around that, but you have to be able to, back it up. And so, I backed it up by with the Droid campaign, which kicked Apple's ass for about 3 months until they bailed on the campaign.
I love it. Yeah, I but don't you feel like that comes down to your level of certainty within yourself too? Like that's where I feel like that personal development and growth comes in too, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. You got to be confident and know. Yeah. But with confidence comes from some level of experience. I mean, we can all have
That's,
it,
that's
built
true.
into us innately, but um, you got to fall on your face a few times too. I've
Oh
done that
gosh.
as
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, but yeah, I mean,
well.
I'd say unfortunately, but it's also necessary.
It's
So
part of the learning. It's painful. But
100%.
typically I've done it more in my own like businesses than for others. I typically I save the home runs for the clients, and I fall on the face for just my own personal ventures. So maybe
I
that's a
guess.
good thing.
I guess. Okay, so last question that I have for you, kind of tying it back to what you were talking about right now. I'm curious to hear about how and if you prioritize mindset work and personal development in your own life. Because for me, it's been like a big deal, but I don't know what it's like for you.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think I've always been a little innate with understanding that if I didn't have myself right, that I wasn't optimal for anyone else either.
Right.
And so like I think at an early age, I was selfish with my time. I've always been a big freedom person, but I work out at least on some level 5 or 6 days a week. I make time for myself to kind of like unwind and do things. And look, I mean, I'm running 4 companies. I have 4 boys under the age of 13. I'm married. And so like no one's busier than me, but I make time for myself and to do those things. And I think because if your mind isn't right, if you're I love it. I don't remember who it was. There's who did the original thing, but kind of the airplane going down oxygen mask thing. Like if you
Right.
don't have
Right.
oxygen, you can't give anyone else oxygen. Like
Yeah.
it's like the perfect example. But 100%, you have to work on yourself, and you have to know that there's another gear that you can take because we all have levels of optimization that we can step up to. So it's huge.
I love it. 100%. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. This has been so much fun. Where can people find you, reach out to you, whatever you've got, share it with us.
Yes. I'm before you could buy it, verified on every platform. So you'll see the blue check with Ryan Alford everywhere on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. And ryanalford.com is my personal website, and radical.company is our company website. So really appreciate the opportunity to come on, and thank you for noting
Awesome.
that.
Thank you so much for being here. Gracias for listening to today's episode of the Breakthrough Brand Show. To listen to more episodes or to be featured as a guest, go to fabipaolini.com/podcast for more details. Can I ask you for something? If you got value out of this episode, would you share it on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or just post it online. If you know somebody that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let me know about the show and include the hashtag Breakthrough Brand Show. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We're regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure that you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe right now. Your thumbs up, rating, amor, love, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean so much to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, fabipaolini.com, or follow me everywhere as Fabi Paolini. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time. Con amor, Fabi.